Yo guys, what is going on? It's been quite a while since I brought you one of these. Just been busy with life stuff and whatnot. And I've also really been enjoying the set 15 format just because of how diverse it is, man. I really have been loving it, and unfortunately I don't think that trend is going to continue in set 16, at least unless we get a couple of cards hit, and we'll kind of talk about that. But here's going to be my breakdown of what I think is going to be competitive in the set 16 beginning observer format. So I really just wanted to limit this to the new stuff and then a couple of older decks that got support, just to avoid this video being like 30 minutes long. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. So how I've kind of laid things out here is tier 1 is going to be the best decks, like no doubt about it. 1.5 is you might see them like top a regional every now and then. They might take up some small percentage of top cut, but not the best strategy, maybe gate kept by tier 1. Tier 2 is like, you might rarely see it. It's more of like a locals thing, and then rogue is just like just like the leftover, I guess. It's just everything else that's not good or playable. And so starting off, I just want to talk about the new Jris decks. So you've got Sylphie as well as like Shakumon, and we've got Imperial as well, but I kind of put this in the category of like an older deck getting support, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But like, for the most part, Sylphie and Shakumon are like new decks because we've gotten a lot more support. We've gotten the dual tamers as well as the new rookies have like the star domain plays and the effectively tricolored cards, because they're dual colored but they evolve on the other two colors, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I'm referring to like the cards like Akilamon and Hawkmon and stuff, where it'll be like, oh, it's red green but evolves on yellow as well. So, and then like the Angemon will evolve on black as well. So they kind of solve some of the consistency issues. The thing I think that's not great about these decks is just because of the fact that they're Jris decks, they require so many pieces. Like, you need the level 3s, you need the level 4s, you need the one level 5 as well as maybe like a tamer or something. And even then, the payoff themselves is like alright. Like, Sylphimon has like a pretty solid effect for a level 5, but realistically it's not like that great of an effect. I'm trying to find it. Here it is. So it's like, okay, you -7 something, kill a 4k body, so in theory you can kill like an 11k stack or to snipe like 2 bodies. That seems like okay, but is it really worth the payoff? And then same thing with Shakumon. I think Shakumon's a little bit better because it basically makes itself a towers, and then you get to pseudo chaos degrade something. So I think this one's a pretty decent DNA mechanic kind of payoff, because it lets you it gives you a really good payoff for investing all those resources, and not only that, but also now you have the new partition keyword, which definitely helps. Because one of the biggest drawbacks with these decks was that, like, you make this stack that you took like 3 turns making, and then it just gets outed by like literally anything. And so I think the Shakumon's a little bit better, but ultimately both these decks I'm going to put in Rogue, because I really don't think they do anything. Like, there's so many decks that just do the same thing but better. If you want a deck that has like hard removal in terms of Shakumon, you could play any other sort of like yellow strategy, yellow vaccine, or Mastamon, or any sort of like black deck. Machine Dramon has like the Digivolve, Warg, stuff like that. If you want to play DP minus, you've got again yellow vaccine or Shine Gray, or any sort of strategy that just does things better and requires less pieces. So Imperial, I think, is a little bit better as far as the Jris decks, but I think they just suck. Like, I'm happy being wrong about this, but I think they're really bad. Another deck I'm really looking forward to, and this one I know a lot of people are hyped about, is going to be Tyrantkabuterimon, or just bugs, basically. So we got the first kind of wave of support for this in set 15, but realistically you aren't really doing anything without your boss monster, which is this guy. So we've got not only an unaffected boss monster that can get up to well over 17, 18, 19,000 DP, but then he's also got that sick end of turn effect where it's just able to bottom deck anything that's on your opponent's side of the field, so long as it's lower DP than something you suspend on your side of the field, which again, you've got lots of ways to buff your DP in this deck, so that's typically not an issue with the strategy. I think, and this is going to be a common theme amongst a lot of these decks, is the reason I'm not going to put this in tier 1 is because it's kind of just gate kept by the actual tier 1 decks, and not being able to deal with those strategies is your biggest issue. The deck is a little bit slow, but I think that payoff is well worth it, because even if you're behind in the first couple of turns, Once you make your big Tyrant push, you can use its effect to spit out another body. Oftentimes it's either Metal Life Kuwagamon or the Grand Kuwagamon Ace, because this lets you play effectively something reduced by 8 costs, so any bug, but like if you're paying it, like if it's 8 costs or lower, you're effectively not paying its cost. So something like Grand Kuwagamon Ace has that really strong on play, so you can just play it out, suspend 2 things, kill a Tamer, and then use the Tyrant effect to suspend the Grand Kuwagamon to then bot deck at 12k, or something like Metal Life, which again on play lets you suspend any Digimon, so opponents or one of yours, so that gives you some really good versatility, either suspending your own Tyrant to make it unaffected, or maybe using the effect to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon to swing over it if you're playing the end of turn Modimon egg that lets you attack a Digimon end of turn. So this card's really good as well, so you've got a lot of strong plays. And then a lot of defensive plays as well. But I think just consistency and the lack of speed will probably put in like 1.5. And again, we'll talk about why I think it's not going to do too much, but I think it'll still see a decent amount of play. Just because it has really good matchups overall, just not into the tier 1 decks. Another deck I'm really excited for, or I know a lot of people are, is kind of Dorugoramon. So we've seen a decent amount of Alphamon support in the past, but this is the other evolution line, and with it comes a new keyword, Collision. So I think it's a really unique keyword, and for those of you who aren't quite familiar with what this card does, Dorugoramon, effectively the whole line has this keyword Collision, which basically, like whenever you swing, it forces your opponent to block as long as they have a Digimon, because it turns all of their Digimon into blockers. Another reason why this deck isn't going to be amazing, I think, is number one, this is kind of like the first wave of support. We get the more Dex Dorugora lines, I think, more recently in EX7-ish and BT17. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we get more support down the line. So number one, it's like a one-wave support kind of deck. Obviously, it does work with like the older X80 body stuff, but the collision strategy is what I'm talking about. But also, because you have to be able to affect your opponent's Digimon to turn them into blockers, so we'll kind of talk about why that's not great. But ultimately, I think this deck is pretty decent. Like, the collision mechanic as a whole is good. The new Dorumon is really strong because you can basically slot your SOC Tamer underneath and then make it effectively unaffected. It just basically can't leave the battle area other than by deletion. So can't leave by bouncing or bottom decking or you know, anything like that. And then if you've got another card, say like the old Dorugoramon that prevents via deletion, well, you just can't leave the battle area, period. So this whole line is like pretty solid. But I just don't really see anything about it that's just like blatantly unfair. Like your boss monster's like, alright, you effectively get to attack unsuspended, or like you force your opponent Digimon to block, you get like piercing, and then you get to like unsuspend. So it's like, and then I guess you like, again, you have like a pretty solid removal effect, because it's, if there has a Tamer card with SOC, you get to delete an unsuspended Digimon or Tamer. So it's similar to like the Oriyumon, the Digipolice, that lets you delete I think it was just suspended Digimon or Tamers, or I think it was bottom decking, but anyways, yeah, so it's like pretty okay, but that card didn't see play either. No one plays Digipolice, so I'm not really sure this deck will see plays, but who knows. Alphamon just, you know, did really well at regional, so maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to for now put this in tier 2, because I just don't really think it's going to be doing anything. Next up, we've got Shroudmon, or the Pulsemon support. Now, this is another deck where I think it is going to be really, really strong in the future. This boss monster, like, reads crazy, dude. Like, this has so many things going for it. It has a really strong on-deletion, a really strong protection effect, and then pretty strong removal, being able to do it when digivolving and end of attacking. Just being able to either delete and unsuspend it or neg something 7,000. It's really strong. The Pulsemon support, I will say, has gotten much better. You get other stuff like the new level 5s and stuff, and then again, you've got really strong inheritance with this one as well, being able to like unsuspend and stuff. So I think it'll be a real deck, but I think probably it won't be tier 1, just because again, I hate to be the reason being like spoilers like this card, but I mean, I think this deck will probably see play, and it'll be pretty decent. I'm gonna put it like high tier 2, maybe like low 1.5 ish. But I think the boss monster is like really, really good. I think it just needs a little bit more support or the right like kind of meta for this to be really solid. Currently, I mean, if you want to get around the on deletion effect, there's a lot of ways to do that in the current meta. If you're playing Mirage, you get to bounce this card. If you're playing Tyrant, you get to bottom deck it. So there's kind of a lot of ways to mitigate that kind of recover 3 effectively. But, the deck is still solid. I just don't think it'll be doing too much. Pulsemon, I'm not even going to talk about this. Like, this is so fake. Like, I don't even know this card does. I've never read any of them. I'm not going to. So, I'm sorry if that's what you're looking forward to, but I don't think it's going to be good at all. So, let's get to the real meat of the video is going to be the 2 armor decks. So, we've got Rapidmon X as well as Magnamon X. Basically, any deck that can play these cards is probably going to be playing these. Like, you see, like, obviously, like, Rapidmon is intended for playing in Rapidmon because its effect is active anytime you have Rapidmon or X Antibody. But I've also seen JP lists playing this in Numemon because if you're playing X Antibody Proto form, you can just slap this on top of a Monzaimon or a Monzaimon X, and then you've still got the Armor Purge effect, you've still got the really strong All Turns effect, being able to just effectively ruin mode your opponent's suspended Digimons. So it's a really, really oppressive card, and I think, again, so you can play this in something like Numemon, you can play this in just like Rapidmon Tribal, kind of the Tyrantkabuterimon deck that we've seen currently with the new starter decks, being able to play like MirageGaogamon Ace, you can play all the Rapidmons like the BT8 or the starter deck one, and then go into this. Like, the fact that you can just evolve this on a champion for 4 is like, dude, like, I get it, like, the lore is like, yeah, okay, you just slap it on top of the X Antibody and you pay a little bit more, but, like, really, like, all you need to do is, like, have a level 4. You can easily do this, like, turn 2, turn 3, and it's no big deal. And then being able to just suspend the whole board, neg them by 4, attack into something, gain 2 memory. It's just a really, really crazy card. Not to mention all the current support you have around it because, like I mentioned, Tyrantkabuterimon just got a new starter deck, but then they also got even more cards in this deck, being like the Lotmon and Tyrantkabuterimon X Antibodies as well as the Cherubimon X. So if you're playing like a tribal kind of Tyrantkabuterimon deck, that's going to be even better, and I kind of have that on my list already. But even if you're playing something like maybe Yellow Vaccine, right? Because, big surprise, this card is in fact yellow, and it is in fact a vaccine, so you can play this in something like Yellow Vac and being able to go into it for a 1 cost off of Emissary, or stack it into your security with something like TK or Patamon is just really, really good, and there's just so much synergy. This card is just insane, so I think I'm going to put this in Tier 1, of course, and then the other Tier 1 deck being a Magnamon X. I think there's no question about these. These are, I mean, they're both secret rares for a reason, and unfortunately both very playable secret rares that you're probably going to need 4 of. But Rapidmon, right, is just insane for all those reasons. So Magnamon is a whole nother beast. Now, while they're both impressive in kind of different ways, I will admit, I think the Ruin mode, the minus 4k effect, is a little bit more annoying for Rapid, but the annoying part about Magnamon is just how much it does. Like, you look at this card, and, like, just look at how many words are on it, guys. Like, you have Blocker, Armor Purge, a 1 Digivolving, and an All Turns effect, which, okay, maybe that, it just, I don't know, it just looks like there's so much going on, because it's also tricolored. But anyway, so there's many reasons why this card is broken. I've had a lot of discussions about this with my friends. So, number 1, obviously, Blocker, Armor Purge are good effects. That's just a staple, like, Magnamon thing. Nothing about that is, like, insane. But the fact that, again, this card can evolve onto any Magnamon that's 2-colored, which last time I checked, all of them were 2-colored. So, any Magnamon or, like, the old Magna X or anything like that. I guess, yeah, so anything except itself, basically, for a 5 cost is just insane. So, like, you can literally, like, turn 1, like, Vmon Training Boost or something, and then turn 2, like, Magna into Magna X. There's just so much potential for this card being, like, playable, like, very early on the game. So that's another reason why, like, not only this card, but also Rapidmon are so good, because of the fact that you don't need a full line. You just need a level 4. Like, you skip the level 5 phase. So it's just a pseudo warp, right? That's what makes this card really good. But the other reason is obviously the 1 Digivolving / All Turns effect, where it says if Magnamon X Antibody or a card with armor form, so just any of your Magnamons, any of your Lydramons, or if you're playing like Vmon Armor Rush, if you're playing Rapidmon, if you just need a Rapidmon, like the armor Rapidmon underneath, anything with armor form will get the job done. If those are underneath it, this card is not affected by your opponent's effects and gains 3000 DP until the end of your opponent's turn, then unsuspend this Digimon. So that sounds like it's not like that crazy just on paper. It's like, okay, it gets 3000, unsuspend it. It doesn't really remove anything, so it doesn't sound like, alright, it's not like a board wipe or anything. It doesn't chaos deg your opponent's card, doesn't neg them DP or anything. But the fact that it makes it unaffected by effects specifically, right? So throughout testing, I've kind of found that, like, okay, we've seen like these unaffected cards before, right? We have something like Tyrantkabuterimon where it says while it's suspended, it isn't affected by the effects of opponent's Digimon. So it's conditional, right? Number one has to be suspended, and number two, it's only opponent's Digimon. Another pretty prominent card is going to be a Fanglongmon, right? This is a pretty staple in the meta. Like, Deva is really, really strong, and this card says this opponent's Digimon isn't affected by this Digimon isn't affected by opponent's Digimon effects. So, it's one thing by not being affected by Digimon, because it's like, okay, well, I can tech in option cards to people to deal with something like Fanglong, but you can't tech in option cards to deal with Magna X, because it's just unaffected by everything. So there's a very limited amount of cards in the game that can actually deal with this. I'll probably make a video on this like separately at some point, but reasonably, it's like, you need to be bigger than it and like be able to attack unsuspended. So that's really limited to like red and black decks, like Warg, right? And then the other thing is like, okay, you can remove it on your opponent's turn if you have something like, I don't know, like All Force X being able to bounce it on your opponent's turn, I guess, before it gets like the unaffected. So like very specific cards, or like Grace Nova, which I actually put in this video, so I'll talk about in a second, where like if you make a Grace Nova with the Blue Tamer start of your opponent's turn, your opponent's Magnamon will be affected, so you can like Source Strip it and whatever. So there's like very few limited cards that can actually deal with this, so it's just a bitch to get off the field. That's the main like thing of why this card's so broken. It's just you can't remove it. It's a 15,000 blocker that just like can't be removed. So it also like deters you from attacking because it's just like randomly so huge. And then the all turns is like when a card's removed from your security stack, you may activate one of this Digimon's one Digivolving. So because it's all turns, you can use this offensively and defensively. So you can be like, okay, I'm gonna swing. My opponent blocks with Magnamon. I swing again. I check their security. They unsuspend. They go to 18 and then still unaffected. So now you just have double block. And then you can also use it offensively, so then on their turn they can be like, okay, I'll swing with Magnamon, it checks the security even before the battle, and then it'll gain the 3000, unsuspend itself, make itself unaffected, and then you can swing again, so effectively getting 2 checks, or if you're playing something like Fire Rocket or Final Zubagon Punch, you can get additional security checks off of that. Okay, so all of those reasons are why this card is broken. The last thing I'll mention as to why this card is like insane is because of Heaven's Judgment. Low-key, like, this card being triple colored is, like, insane, because off of a single Magnamon X, that is minus 24,000 DP. This is giving me war flashbacks to Spiral Masquerade. If any of you guys have played BT5, you'll know what I'm talking about. But this is giving me war flashbacks to Spiral Masquerade, where literally off of one card, my opponent gets a crazy board wipe, and they can distribute that 24 however they want. So that's just off of like the Magnamon. That's not even including if they have like an Ukamon or a Lydramon on field or something like that. So it's like all the combination of these things like make this card just like super broken, and it's like really annoying to deal with. Like I said, there's very, very few cards that can actually just deal with this. With this card. So for all those reasons, like, this card's insane, and it just gatekeeps the rest of the format, which I really don't think is healthy. I hope they do something about this card, because like I said, it's like, okay, you're playing Tyrant, right? Like, let's say I have my Tyrant and I'm swinging security, and it's like, okay, end of turn, bottom deck, I can't get rid of your Magnamon, so it's just like, you just have like a guy who can 2-check me next turn, proc his immunity again, and like you just perpetually do it. On top of that, another thing I didn't mention was the fact that you can run something like Blinding Ray, right? Like Blinding Ray, even if like before I attack my opponent's security with like something like Magnamon X, I can trigger its immunity again on my turn by using Blinding Ray, just by trashing security, gaining 2 memory for free, and then just triggering its immunity, giving it plus 3000, that sort of thing. So there's just so many reasons why this card is just annoying. And then, like, again, like, Collision can't affect it. Any sort of DP neg from a Digimon or, like, a removal effect can't really affect it. Like, literally none of the decks I've talked about can do anything about like Magnamon. There's very, very few cards in the game I feel like that can actually deal with this. So for all those reasons, I'm gonna put it in the top of tier 1. Let's go through the rest of the decks somewhat fast, just because I don't really have too much to say on them. Phoenixmon, I think this deck is like pretty solid. Now that we've got like the second wave of support, we got the first wave kind of in BT15. Phoenixmon X, I think, is the cherry on top. Again, gate kept by the fact that there's a 15,000 blocker with immunity going around in the format. I don't think it's really going to do too much, but I think it's like a pretty okay like tier 2-ish pick. Imperial has seen a lot of success in Japan, so I'm probably going to put it in 1.5 for now, just because we've gotten a lot of new mechanics. We can now source strip more effectively. You've still got the old stuff that lets you get multiple swings in. You've got pretty good removal with stuff like Megadeth, Imperial Dramons, fighter mode, new aces as well. The fighter mode ace is really strong. And then not even to mention, we'll get Paladin mode ace a little bit down the line. So overall, really strong stuff. I'm hesitant to really put this any higher, just because it's still a Jogres deck, and it still requires a lot of pieces, but I will say it's much more consistent than like these two, right? You still have like the original Davis, you've got the fact that Vmon just has like so much support. You've got the promo Vmon, you can play like Ukos and stuff, so there's a lot of ways you can like kind of mitigate that, and I think it's like pretty okay. Terriermon, I think again, like if you're playing like Rapidmon, like yeah, like the Rapidmon stuff makes it tier 1. So I'll just put this in like 1.5 for now, just because like I actually do think the Cherubimon stuff is like really solid. And then if you're if you're playing Rapidmons, because like why would you not if you're playing like bunnies, right? Like you're probably playing Rapid X too. So I think that the deck overall, like the archetype overall, is just like really solid. Numemon is the other deck I kind of want to talk about, and so this deck kind of came out of nowhere in set 15, and just it's been topping regionals left and right. So it's a really strong pick, and I think you get even more things to work with in set 16. Like I said, you indirectly get like support just because you can play X Antibody Protoform, and so now you have access to something like Rapidmon X, because it just requires you to have X Antibody underneath it. So you get another really good floodgate that's good in the mirror. Excuse me, you get a lot of like value off of just being able to gain memory every single time something is reduced to 0 DP. Not only can Rapidmon X do that, but then you've also got tools like Monzemon and Monzemon X already, so that's really strong. You also get a really powerful ace in the form of Valkyremon, so being able to just swing out with your Monzemons, getting maybe 2 security checks in with the Inheriteds, and then setting up for a Valkyremon ace on your opponent's turn is, again, a pseudo-ruin mode. So if you've got this with combination, in combination with the Rapidmon, it becomes really, really strong. And then not only that, but it's also a really good aggressive card. So Valk Ace, I think, helps the deck out a lot. I think the biggest reason, the biggest thing that boosts this deck is going to be Ukomon here. So the new Ukomon is effectively just a 1-cost search and hatch. So we've already seen how good like the original Ukomon is, just being able to get effectively another breeding phase, really good for aggro. This one is just as good, if not better, being able to do that same thing, but then now you also boost your consistency, just being able to grab your Sasukis or any of your Digimon you may need in your Numemon deck. Or just, I mean, this is just an overall really, really good card in general. But specifically Numemon helps out a lot, because your whole strategy is Rookie Rush, so you'll move out, get your search, and then just start swinging, right? So there's a lot of like indirect support that just makes Numemon, like, I think really, really good. So I'm going to put this at tier 1 alongside the armor decks, solely because this is a very fast deck, and while Magnamon is really, really annoying, and okay, I will admit, like, your matchup into Rapid is probably abysmal. Like, if your opponent's playing Rapid, you probably need some sort of out, again, like the Valkyremon Ace or your own Rapid, in combination with like your Monzemons to be able to DP neg this to get rid of it before you start swinging. But this punishes wide boards really well. So I'm hesitant to put this here, but I do think Numemon is one of the few decks that actually has the speed to contest with Magnamon, because it's like, okay, you have effectively one big blocker, I guess 2 blocks if you start swinging. So, but Numemon has the capability to not only float, but swing many, many times throughout the course of a single turn. And it's seen pretty decent results in Japan. So I'm going to go ahead and put this like low end of tier 1, just because I do think the floating capabilities and the board spam is really, really strong. The other deck I wanted to talk about, or I guess decks, is just like stuff that got kind of new support. So Mirage got this new Gaomon, which I guess also is relevant to Grace Nova. But so Mirage, first of all, got this new Gaomon, but I do think, number one, because it's been seeing a lot of success in the set 15 format, people are going to continue playing it. But I also think because of the existence of this MirageGaogamon, the one that if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, the target of this Digimon's attack can't be switched for this turn. This actually is one of the few ways you can kind of bypass Magnamon X or any sort of like big blocker that your opponent has on the field. Mirage has never been a deck that really cares about what your opponent does. You're just kind of setting up for a couple turns and then you OTK, and this kind of embodies that even more. So this is one of the few decks I think could be pretty decent into Magnamon, just because you can kind of just set up, gather up resources, and then just OTK your opponent. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in like high 1.5. Actually, let me go ahead and put Numemon along with there. So I'm going to put these in like high 1.5, just because these have the potential to be tier 1. And I think they're going to see a pretty decent amount of play, just because, I mean, people love Numemon, people love Mirage, and they're both pretty solid in what they do. So Mirage is a really, really cool deck. I think it can punish big hands, and being able to just bypass the blockers is pretty sick as well. Grace Nova, I think, might be a sleeper, again, because you do get a lot of support in the form of the Gaomon, as well as the Agumon, so your overall consistency is boosted, and then you do, again, get the support from BT16 being in the Ukomon as well. This is really good in Grace Nova as well, being the extra body that you can bounce off of your Lunamon and Coronamon rookies, and then just giving you extra consistency as well. So Grace Nova, I'm going to put like in 1.5 as well. I think this is kind of a sleeper pick, and again, it is one of the few decks that actually has the means to deal with Magnamon X, and in a format full of armors, I think Source Strip can go kind of crazy. So I'm gonna put this like right here, just because I think this is a little bit sleeper. Whether or not it'll see play, I'm not sure, but I do think it has potential. And then the last deck I want to talk about is going to be Lugamon, because you do actually get a decent amount of support. You get this new delay option card. You get your new red-purple line as well in the form of your Soul Luga. I think you get a couple other cards there. Soul Luga might be it. But yeah, you get a decent amount of support. Oh, you get a new Hell Luga as well. So you get a decent amount of support. I think Lugamon will still be fine. It's done like fine in this format as well. Has a pretty overall decent matchup spread. But I think, like, again, the fact that you can't remove this guy, and you can't really, like, you can go wide, but the neg 4 matters a lot, especially if you're combining that with something like a Valkace or any other forms of DP neg, or maybe double Rapidmon can be pretty nasty. So I'm gonna put Luga, I can probably put this in 1.5. Let's put it like right here. I think it's done decent enough throughout the course of like set 15 where people will play it. It's a solid deck. It gets more support. But as to how it's doing into the armors, I'm not actually too sure. So you guys let me know that your thoughts down in the comments. But yeah, guys, that is going to be it for the BT16 tier list video. That's kind of all I want to talk about, was the kind of new strategies and how basically just complaining about these two cards, because I think they're pretty ridiculous. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and if there were any decks that I didn't talk about this time, let me know your thoughts. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.